Thank you for joining us today for our RapidLog OnDemand training webinar. Today we will show you how to manage your drivers, process your logs, show you what light processing is, show you how to audit your data, show you how to run reports, and show you how to use web reports. So let's get started by moving on to driver management. In this webinar segment, we're going to show you how to manage your drivers, and we will be covering the following: how to add a driver, what are the 6 required fields when adding a driver, how to delete a driver from your system, how to terminate a driver, how to add a driver to a terminal, how to use important dates, and what counts towards your active driver count. So let's get started by going over to the drivers page. To navigate to the drivers page, simply click on the drivers tab at the top of the program. From there, we'll have the driver search pulled up. Now, to add a driver to your system from here, what we'll need to do is just click on the Add button. Now, there are 6 important fields that you'll need to fill out for the drivers to work well in your system. And those fields are going to be the first name, the last name, the primary ID, the hire date, the driver type, and the terminal. These fields are important for the following reasons. The primary ID helps link RapidLog and RapidLog Pro when you do the log import from RapidLog Pro. So this is how the system knows where to send logs to which driver after it's done processing. The hire date is important for the missing log audit. So essentially the way the missing log audit works is it looks at the driver's hire date and will only look for missing logs after that point in time. Another important field is going to be the driver type. The driver type tells the missing log audit if a driver is required to hand in a log every day. If you set a driver as a part-time driver, any missing logs will be flagged as an inactive log for that particular day, whereas full-time drivers will get a missing log violation after the missing log audit is run. And finally, the last important field is going to be the terminal. Now, the terminal will depict what rule set you're going to be using. And if you remember our earlier example, the Denver terminal is set to oil 70 and 8, and the Greeley terminal is set to use default, which is the US 70 and 8 jurisdiction. So when adding this driver, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and choose the appropriate terminal. And since it's just for testing purposes, we'll go ahead and set our driver up on the Greeley terminal and fill out the required information. Now, an important thing to remember about the primary ID field is that you can use either letters, numbers, or numbers and letters. You'll just want to stay away from special characters, and also you'll want to keep the primary ID 9 characters or less. Anything over 9 characters will not be accepted into the system. So to finish this driver up, we'll just wrap up adding the hire dates and the driver type here. Now, there are some additional fields that you can fill out which may be helpful in your system here. You can utilize the driver's license field to let drivers know when their driver's license is going to expire. And talking about expirations, this will be a good time to cover the important dates field. So to save our changes, we'll click the OK button to save this driver, and we're going to go ahead and navigate over to the important dates field. Now, this part of the program is used strictly for reporting. So essentially, if you notice down under the other expiration dates, we have DOT physical, annual review, and the rest are unused. Now, all of these fields down below here are editable. So if you wanted to overwrite the DOT physical with something else, you can feel free to do that. So essentially, if you use the other expiration dates, what this will do for you is when a driver comes up on an expiration that you set in the system, it'll notify them about a month in advance so that they have ample time to take care of their expired driver's license or their DOT physical or various other expirations that you set in the system here. So it's a very useful thing to use if used right and if you're using the simple letters, but it's not a required field like the other 6 fields that we were talking about before. But I just wanted to show you this because some customers find this very useful in communicating expirations with their drivers. So after we've added all the information that we need for our particular driver, the way that we would add an additional driver to this into the system is by either clicking the Quick Add Another button down below here, or we could navigate back to the search page and then click on the Add button down below just as we did before. Now, with this search page, if you wanted to bring up your entire list of drivers, what you would just need to do is click on where it says Enter Search Text here, and then hit your Enter button, and then that will pull up all drivers in your system. Now, if you wanted to just look for a particular driver in your system, you would just type the first few letters of their last name, and that would pull up only those drivers there. So let me show you how that search works by adding another driver into the system and then searching for Tony Brown here in just a minute. So we'll go ahead and click the Add button to add another driver. And we'll add the primary ID and set the hire date, driver type, and terminal. After we're done, we'll click OK to save changes. And if you needed to add another driver at this point, again, you can click the Quick Add Another button to bring up a blank form for the new drivers you need to add. But getting back to the search page, I'll show you how we can pull up just a specific driver. So I'm just going to click up top here and hit my Enter button again to bring up all my drivers. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and type the first few letters of the last name and then hit my Enter key. And then this will only show us the drivers that have their last name containing these few letters here. And that about covers adding drivers to the system. Now what we'll just want to discuss is what constitute an active driver in the system and how we can terminate drivers or remove drivers that we no longer need in the system. So when you purchase the RapidLog program, you are allotted X amount of drivers. This may be 10, this may be 1,000 drivers. But essentially you cannot enter logs into the system if you have more than the number of drivers that you're authorized for. So in our system, if we only had 10 drivers purchased and added 11 drivers, we wouldn't be able to navigate to the logs page and the audit page unless we added termination dates when those drivers are no longer active. So essentially, to add a termination date to a driver is you'll just want to search for that driver and double click on that driver to go into the details record. So that's the details button over here. This is this page right here. Now, this driver is considered an active driver in our system right now because he does not have a termination date. Now, if this driver left our company and we didn't want this driver to count against our active driver count, we would simply need to just add a termination date in the system. So I'll just say this guy was terminated September 1st. Click OK to save our changes. Now we only have the one active driver in the system because we went ahead and terminated this driver here. Now, if you accidentally added a driver that you don't need in the system anymore, what you'll want to do is you'll want to click on the search button on the left-hand side, search for the appropriate drivers, and then after you find the driver you need to delete, just click on that driver and then hit the delete button down below. Confirm the delete from here, and then that should remove that driver from the system for you. Now, let's go through the scenario where you have a driver that is working for you, and he decides to take a month-long vacation. So you don't want that driver to get missing logs during that point in time, but you still want to keep his information in the system. One thing that you could do there is just go into the driver's details here, and you can change the driver type for drivers that are on extended leave. So drivers that may be on a medical leave or on vacation for quite some time, what you can do to not have the system fill in missing logs for those drivers during that period of time, you can just set that driver to an inactive driver while he's gone. And when he returns to work, just flip him back over to a full-time driver. And then that way the system will again then look for missing logs in the system once you flip them back from the inactive driver back to the full-time driver. So that's how you'll kind of handle drivers that are taking extended leave, and you don't want to see those missing logs violations in the system. Now, if that doesn't bother you, you can feel free to keep the driver just under the status that they were under before and not have to worry about it and just deal with the missing logs violations. But that is one additional thing that you can do with drivers that are taking an extended leave there. And that about wraps it up for the driver management here. And we're just going to go ahead and run down what we have just finished covering there. Now that we've showed you how to add and manage your drivers in the system, we'll move on to RapidLog Pro and show you how to process the driver's logs. In the next webinar segment, we're going to show you how to process logs, and we will be covering the following: how to set up automatic form and manner violations, how to optimize RapidLog Pro, how to set your grid quarters, how to adjust the grid data, how to enter your ID numbers, how to enter the dates and use the max date feature, how to enter miles, how to find drivers, and finally how to import your log data. So let's move over to RapidLog Pro to show you how to process your logs. Now, when you open up RapidLog Pro for the first time, you will see up on your screen that you have 2 steps to complete before you can use the program. And this will cover configuring the company settings and then also setting up your automatic form and manner violations. So let's go ahead and click on step 1 first here. And the first thing that it'll be asking is, what are the driver IDs that we're going to be using? It's going to ask us if we're going to be using only numbers, only letters, or letters and numbers for our ID numbers. So for our company that we set up in RapidLog, I was using letters only for the ID number. So I'll set that up for letters only. So the next thing that we'll cover is the processing order. And essentially what this is asking is, do you want to process these as you scanned them? So the first image that you scan through will be the first image you'll see in RapidLog Pro. Otherwise, what the system can try to do is you can set it by unconfirmed driver ID. So when the program imports those logs into RapidLog Pro, and it does the auto read step, it's going to try to read those ID numbers for us. And if we do it by unconfirmed ID, you can try to have the system batch those up by driver. But I would recommend just sorting your drivers by date and by driver, and that will probably help you out the most in the system as far as the way that you process them. So a good thing to do is always just sort your drivers by date and by driver as far as that goes. So once you set up your settings in here, we're just going to click on the Done button. And the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to set up our automatic form and manner violations on step 2 here. So when you get set up for the program for the first time and you complete the final setup and template request, you will get a template assigned to your company and added in here. Now, to turn on the automatic form and manner violations, what you'll need to do is you'll just need to go over to the appropriate field and then click on the change button here. And then this will bring up a list of different form and manner violations that we can assign to that field. So to assign the truck numbers field violation, I'll go ahead and select the unit number here. And then to turn on the automation if no ink is detected, I'll just click on the little drop down here, select G1 unit number, and then click OK to save the changes. So now we'll notice the primary RapidLog violation in here is unit number, missing or illegible, and then the automatic violation is turned to true there. So I'm just going to finish up setting up my other fields for the form and manner violation here, which will take just a minute. Today I'll just be adding a couple of the basic form and manner violations, but you can feel free to add as many form and manner violations as you like here for your company. But once you're done adding the form and manner violations in the system here, just click on the Done button, and that'll move you over to the main page of RapidLog Pro. Now, before we process any logs, I do want to cover one last thing as far as the configuration goes. And that's going to be the Configure button right here. And a couple of things I like to do is I like to turn on the skew option here. That's going to help us straighten the logs out a little bit and can get you a little bit better results reading the grid data sometimes. The other thing that I like to do is I like to let our customers know that there is some auto verification rules set up by default. Most of these I like to keep checked, but one that you may want to uncheck is the auto verify miles. Otherwise, if you're not too worried about the system automatically accepting the mileage for you, then you can just keep that checked. And you can also adjust the accepted miles per hour there. So if you wanted to set that on the low end of 50 miles per hour and the high end of 65 miles per hour, you could adjust those as well. But for today, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to keep everything set to auto here as we go through the processing steps here. So once you're done there, just click on the Done button, and that will bring you back to the main page in RapidLog Pro. So I'm going to go ahead and get some images ready for us to process with the batch builder step. You can either do the scanning or the batch builder to bring your images into the system, but essentially we have some more detailed instructions on that from our website out at rapidlog.com under the video tutorials that goes into the scanning and the batch builder a little bit more in depth. But right now we're just going to bring those images into the system so that we can go ahead and start processing those. All right, now that we've imported some logs into the system, the first step that we're going to cover is the auto read step. This is the step where the program is trying to locate the grid extents and also do a little bit of automation here. So what we'll need to do is we'll just need to click on the auto read here and then click on the process button down below. Now, before we start that, I just wanted to point out there are different steps that we'll have to go through. And right now, I'm able to select which step I want to go through if we had a batch ready for that step. So if you wanted to keep it where you can select which batches or which steps you do at what time, you can keep it on the by step. Otherwise, if you wanted to finish a batch from start to finish, just do one batch at a time, start to finish, and that'll lock your selection to that batch until it's imported. So in the scenario that we had multiple users processing at the same time, and one user was in charge of just doing the grid step, and another user was in charge of doing the other steps, you would want to select the by step method so that you can just pull the images through the auto read step and just work them through a particular step there. Otherwise, if it's just one person doing the logs, you can either do the by step method or one batch at a time, start to finish, whatever you feel more comfortable with. I personally like the by step, so we'll just keep it by step here, and we'll click on our auto read process right there, and then we'll hit the process button down below. Now it's going to go ahead and find those grid extents for us and all that during those steps. steps, and it actually skipped over form identification and locate grid because it was able to locate all the grids for us. And if you notice, the one beside the auto read is now moved down to the grid step. So that's just indicating we have one batch ready for processing on the grid step here. So we'll just go ahead and make sure the grids is selected there, and we'll hit the process button from here. Now, the program detected all of the grids really well for us, so we didn't have to reset any of the grid corners. But in the event that the grid detection was off track and we had a crooked grid here, let's say it looks something along the lines of this here, all out of whack. What we can do to reset that grid is we can click on the Reset Grid button here, or the Set Grid Corners button here. And this will bring up a little magnification window that we can move around. Now what we'll want to do is we'll want to position that over the upper left-hand corner of the grid, and then we'll click through the little window to set the upper left-hand corner. From there, the other magnification window will pop up for the upper right-hand corner, and again, we'll move that over the upper right-hand corner of the grid, and then click through the little window to set that grid corner. And as you can see, it reset the grid corners for us, and put that back to normal like we had it before. So that's how you'll reset grid corners if you do have a grid that's out of whack and need to reset that. Now, the next thing that we'll want to cover is how to change the grid data. So let's say the program decided that it was detecting ink down below here, but the driver didn't write here and we needed to correct this. Now what we can do is we can either click and drag across the segment that we would like to change here, right on the image itself. Otherwise what we can do is we can correct the digital grid down below here, and by clicking and dragging just like we did on the image. So if you click and drag down below on the digital grid or click and drag on the image, that will adjust the grid information inside there, and you should only have to do that if it's reading incorrectly. And finally, what I like to do is I just like to check my totals that my driver wrote on the right-hand side here against my digital grid totals down below. So if everything seems like it's matching up, then we should be okay. If the green line is following the black line where the drivers wrote, and these totals match up here, that indicates that everything should be good to go there, and we can click on our next button up top or our enter button on our keyboard to move on to the next log. So on this log, the driver actually wrote into the grid itself, so the program's picking that up as ink and is having a little trouble figuring out where the line actually is there. So we'll just click and drag across the segments that we need to fix here. And if everything looks good, we'll just hit our next button up top there. Now, one thing I do want to point out is this number right down here, 12 of 14. So essentially, we've only had to touch 2 logs so far, but the rest of those logs it automatically accepted for us. So you'll only have to process logs that the system had issues reading either the grid information inside here or reading the duty status totals on the right hand side here is really the only time you'll have to adjust the grid data in here. And we have another one that we'll just need to verify. So this one's looking great, and we'll just click the next button, and this one's looking good as well. So that'll wrap up the grid step for us. And if we notice, the ID step is now highlighted with the number 1 beside it. So then we can go ahead and enter our ID numbers by clicking the process button down below here. Now, the way that the ID step works is you'll always have to confirm the first log that it comes across. So this one, it actually read incorrectly. It decided it's IHUR when really it's THUR. So we'll just go ahead and highlight that field there, and then make our correction by typing on our keyboard. Once everything looks good there, just go ahead and hit your enter button or the next button up top here. So again, it thought that it read IHUR, which doesn't match THUR, so we'll have to confirm this ID again. Now, you may have noticed that the little gears popped up for just a second there, and we're actually on image 4 of 14. So essentially, it read the third image as driver ID THUR and automatically accepted that for us. So we'll just have to, continue to click through here if it read it differently. The nice thing though is after you change the ID number in here, it will stay there until you explicitly change it. So if we move on to the next log here, driver ID WACM, it's not going to change that until we confirm the change there. Now, if we notice down here, it says the computer read WACM, which is what the driver wrote up top here. So to do an autofill here, instead of typing WACM in this area, if we hit our period button on the keyboard, that'll actually take the information on what the computer read and put it up into this field. And then if everything looks good, we'll just go ahead and click our enter button or our next button up top there. And again, we switch back to THUR, so we'll hit our period button because the computer read THUR, and then we'll hit the enter key after that to accept it. Now that we've finished the ID number step, we'll move on to the dates step. To process through the dates step, click on the dates radio button and then the process button after that. Now, there's a couple of different ways in which you can handle the dates. If you are working within a given month for your drivers, you can utilize the max date feature. And what this will do for you is you can simply just type in the day and it'll autofill the month that you're working in. Now, if you're working over a couple of months and you set the max date in here, let's say to February. Let's say we were working in February and January there. If we type in 15, it's going to give us February 15th because that's our max date. Now, if we needed to change that to 1/15, we would just type in 0115 for January 15th, and then that would change that value in here for us. But since we're just working in January, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and set my max date to January 31st, and I'm going to type in 11 for this day. After you type in the value there, go ahead and click on the enter button or the next button up top. Now, if you notice, we have moved on to the third image, so it automatically accepted the second image. So if the log dates are adjacent to each other, then and the system reads the adjacent date, it will automatically accept that for you. Otherwise, if the dates are not adjacent, it will automatically stop on the next log for you. Or if the system has an issue reading the date altogether due to driver handwriting or something like that, it will come up for confirmation as well at that point. So we'll just continue to work through our date step here. And here would be a case where the system had an issue reading the driver's handwriting, thinking the day was 77. So we'll just need to change that to 05 to correct that. After you finish the date step, you'll move on to the miles step. So again, click on the radio button and then the process button after that. Since we have automatic mileage turned on, and this value is being read as 7,449, that is going to be outside the settings for the maximum and the minimum speed on what will automatically accept. So the system is going to stop us here and confirm that it's reading it correctly. Obviously, the driver didn't drive 7,450 miles today, so we'll just want to delete the 7 there. And once everything looks good, we'll hit our enter button to confirm the mileage there. The rest of the logs it was able to automatically read, and then the average speed averaged between 30 miles per hour and 75 miles per hour, so it automatically accepted that for us there. Now, today the logs that we are running through, we didn't have any off days logs. So essentially the way that the off days step works is it just asks you how many days off the driver took. So if it's a single off duty day, you would just type in the number 1 or the number 0 and then hit your enter button for a single off duty day. Now, if the off duty period span multiple days there, you would then just type in the number of days that driver was off. After you type that number in, the system would give you an option to either go forward in time from the date that you entered. So let's say that we had an off-duty log and we said the date was January 1st, and we set that for 2 days off. The system would then ask us, is this going to be off days for January 1st and January 2nd, or is this going to be off days from December 31st to January 1st? We would then make our appropriate selection and then click the enter button or the next button in the top of the program. Now, since we don't have any off days logs, we won't be able to go over that step today. But if you do go to our website and pull up our training videos about processing through RapidLog Pro, it'll actually cover each individual step in a little bit more detail. But right now what we're going to do is we're going to cover the find driver step since we didn't have any off days logs. So again, we'll just click on the Find Drivers Radio button and then hit our Process button from here. Now, the system was having some issues finding the driver ID WACM. So what we can do is we can search for drivers in our system that we actually needed to send those logs to. So earlier in the training, we set up 2 drivers in our system. So I'm going to pull up the second driver that we added in our system, last name Tregoning. So I'll just type in TREG and then hit my enter button or search to find those drivers. Now that we've found our driver, we'll click on the driver's name down below and say use this ID. Now that we've assigned the logs to the appropriate drivers, we're going to go ahead and import those logs. So click on the Import Radio button there and then hit the Process button. Now, in this step, it'll bring up any conflicts that it found in the system. So essentially, as we were entering logs in, we had 2 dates of 1/8. So we have 1/8 on either side. And if we notice over here down below, we see that both of these logs were in the batch. So what we need to do is we need to tell the system which is the correct log and which log we would like to discard. So just for training purposes, I'm going to say that this is the correct log on the left-hand side here, and that I would just like to delete the one on the right-hand side. Now, there are a couple of other things that you can do here as well. So if you didn't want to delete this log out and you just wanted to either assign that to a different driver or change that log state, you can do either of these at this point in time and then save your changes here. Now, when entering the driver here, you'll just want to make sure that you enter the driver ID and not the driver name to make those corrections if you needed to in that way. But today what I'm just going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and hit the delete button to discard this image from our batch. After you've worked through all the conflicts, the gear symbol will pop up for you and import those logs into the regular RapidLog program. Now, that just about covers it for processing logs, so let's go ahead and take a look on what we've just covered. Now that we've showed you how to process your logs through RapidLog Pro, we'll now show you how to process your logs through the regular RapidLog program using the RapidLog Lite method As well, we will show you how to handle border crossings and how to edit your data after it has already been imported into your system. In this webinar segment, we'll be covering light processing and editing data on the logs page, and we will be covering the following. What is light processing? How to change entry mode, how to enter logs with or without images, how to enter your mileage, how to add form and manner violations, how to delete a log, how to enter truck numbers for team drivers, and how to add border crossings. So let's go ahead and go over to the logs page in the regular RapidLog program to get started. So now that we're on the logs page, we're going to go ahead and cover what light processing actually is. Now, light processing just refers to processing through the regular RapidLog program, either with or without images. So essentially, if you don't scan images, you'll definitely want to use the light processing. But for people that do scan images, and maybe let's say your drivers have all different styles of logs and RapidLog Pro just doesn't work well for you, you may want to look into processing through the light module here. Now the first thing we'll cover is processing without images. Now this is going to be very easy. It's going to be a little time consuming because you're going to have to transcribe the log that's on your desk into the system, but once you get the hang of it, it shouldn't be too bad. We'll just go ahead and cover that now. So what we'll do is, if you do not scan images in, I would recommend using the mouse and keyboard entry from the logs page. Now this, if we click down here, we'll notice that it's the little mouse icon to give us keyboard and mouse entry. The pieces of paper would be used if you were doing scanning. So that's going to be the batch entry. And then there are two other entry methods, the Visioneer strobe and the tablet entry, which is more designed for some of the older systems. So you won't really have to worry about covering the tablet or strobe entry methods, as you'll probably either do the mouse and keyboard entry or just scan your images into the system. So to enter a login with mouse and keyboard entry, what you'll just need to do is you'll need to go to the appropriate driver. And to do this, you can just highlight the driver's name and type in the first few letters of the last name, or if you're searching by ID, you could just type in the ID number. So we'll just move over to Tony Brown here. So let's just go to January 1st here. So we'll just type in 0101 and then hit our enter key. Now from here, we'll type in the miles for that day. So we'll just say 500 miles, and then we'll hit our enter key. This will bring us down into the grid step. So from here, you can either use your keyboard. So to use your keyboard, what you'll do is you'll just use your right arrow to move over to the appropriate time, and then once let's say the driver was going to drive at 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. So what we would do, so we'll just move our little strobe marker that's located about 2:30 right now over to about 3 a.m. From 3 a.m. we'll click our down arrow key on our keyboard until we get to duty status 3, and then we'll hit our right arrow key until 6, and then again we'll click up to move them back into off duty. So essentially you'll just use your keys to kind of trace where the driver's going. So I'm just using my right arrow keys and up and down buttons to move the duty statuses here. Now some people prefer this method. I would typically enter the logs in with my mouse. So if you didn't like the keyboard entry, what you can do is, so if we were going to accept this log, we would just hit our enter or next button here, and that'll move us to the next day. Now, if we wanted to just use our mouse entry, we would just type in the miles here, let's say 500, and then we would just click and drag across the appropriate duty statuses we wanted to transcribe there. I personally find the mouse entry a little bit easier than the keyboard entry method, but just do what feels right to you, and just kind of go from there. But after you're done transcribing your logs, again, you'll just click on the next button or move over to the next date to save your changes there. Now, for people that scan the logs into the light program here, what you'll want to do is you'll want to make sure that you're selected on batch entry down at the bottom right here. So we'll just click on batches, and to get the images into the system, you'll either use Batch Builder or the scanning module, which is the scan logs button right here, to scan or batch build those images into the system. So we're not going to cover that right now because we already have some images in the system ready for processing. So at this point, what we'll just need to do is we'll just want to click on the Process Next Batch button. From here, that's going to give us our log image. So we'll just navigate over to the appropriate driver and date and then fill in the information from there. So this one's for July 7th, so we'll just type in 0107 and then hit our enter button. After that, it'll jump us over to the miles step, so we'll just type in 616 here. And then after we type in the miles, we'll click on the Accept button on the left here. Now, if you notice, the digital grid has been filled in for us because the system is going to try to transcribe that for us. This one did a really good job, so it translated everything correctly there. But let's say the system didn't quite read something right and we needed to make a change there. What we would do is we would either just click and drag on the image itself to make the changes there, or we could click and drag on the digital grid up top here to correct the grid data. Once you're finished with that particular log, just click on the next button there and follow the same steps. So we'll type in the miles here again, click the Accept button to accept the log, and then make any changes as necessary. Now that about covers it for light processing. Now we'll cover a couple of other things that you can do on the logs page here. Now there are a couple of other things in here that you can change for certain periods of time, such as speed limits, jurisdictions, truck numbers, and different things like that. So the first thing that we'll cover is we'll cover the speed limits. Now, most of the time you won't have to worry about changing the speed limits for the individual drivers, as you should set that up on the terminal level. But if for some reason you need to change it for a specific driver during a period of time, you can right-click on the So what you can do is you can right-click on the speed limit time bar here and then change the speed limit for that one driver. So we'll select 75 miles per hour in the system here. And if we go forward in time here, and we'll notice that the 75 miles per hour will stick until we explicitly change that on the speed limit time bar again. Now, if you're having trouble viewing these time bars, that may be hidden under this little tab here. So if you notice on the right-hand side of your program, you have this little up or down arrow here. And so if you don't see the speed limit time bar or the jurisdiction time bar, you can simply click on the little down arrow on the right-hand side here to make those visible. Now that we've covered the speed limits, let's go ahead and talk about the jurisdictions. Now, the jurisdiction will be mostly useful for border crossings. So if you are traveling back and forth between the United States and Canada, you'll probably need to change your jurisdiction at some point in time there. So under any border crossing, what you'll do is you'll just go to the appropriate driver and date, and then right-click on the jurisdiction time bar at what time the border crossing occurred. So if the border crossing took place at 10 a.m., so we are in the United States and crossing into Canada at 10 a.m., we would just right-click on the jurisdiction time bar at 10 a.m. and then select our Canada jurisdiction. Now again, this jurisdiction is going to carry forward in time until we explicitly change it. So if we had another border crossing on the 11th coming back into the States, we would just right-click on the jurisdiction time bar and select the US 70 and 8 jurisdiction here. And again, that jurisdiction will carry forward until you add another border crossing into the system. And by doing this, you'll ensure that your drivers are compliant in both the US and Canadian regulations depending on where they're driving during a particular period of time. Now, another nice feature in the system is the Team Drivers feature, and that can be found on the truck icon time bar right here. So let's say we have two drivers that are on a team and we want to make sure that they're not driving at the same time. What we'll do is we'll add each of the team drivers to a given truck, and then the system can make sure that those guys are compliant when driving as teams. So to add teams to the system, what you'll do is you'll just go to the appropriate driver and date, and then right-click on the truck numbers time bar to add that driver to a truck. From there, you'll select the other option, and you can type in the truck number that you want to load them to. So we'll just say this is going to be truck number 606, and click OK. And from there, that truck number again is going to carry forward in time until we explicitly remove that driver from the truck by either right-clicking on the truck numbers time bar and selecting none. Otherwise, if let's say this driver was teaming up with a different driver at this point in time, we could right-click on that truck numbers time bar, select other, and then type in the new truck number there. So now that we've added the truck number for this driver, we'll also want to add that to this driver's teammate. So we'll just navigate over to the teammate here, and let's go to 18. And from there, we'll load this driver up on the truck by right-clicking on the truck numbers time bar and selecting other, and then typing that truck number in. And then on the 9th, if we wanted to remove that driver, again, we would just right-click on the truck number time bar, select the none, and then we remove that driver from that team. So that's all you need to do to add your drivers in as teammates to make sure that they're not driving at the same time. And then the last thing that we're going to be covering today is the oil-filled time bar. Now, the only reason that you'll need to use the oil-filled time bar is if you're using the oil 70 and 8 jurisdiction or the oil 60 and 7 jurisdiction. So essentially, anytime your drivers are on the oil field, you'll want to note that in the system here. So to do that, you'll just right-click on the oil field time bar when the driver entered the well site. You'll just mark them as on, and from there, once they leave the well site, you'll just right-click at that period in time and tell the system that they left the oil site by marking off there. So the way that you'll want your drivers to log this, if you have a 4-line log, is you'll just want to have them mark off duty, and then you'll want to manually fill in the on and off times of the well site from the system here. Now, if you're using RapidLog Pro and are either utilizing the oil-filled time bar, or if you have a 5-line log, the system will automatically do this for you. So it's pretty rare that you'll have to enter this information on your own. There's a couple of circumstances where you may have to if you do the light processing. This is something that you will probably have to do manually. But if you use RapidLog Pro and either have a 5-line log or a log that has an oil-filled time bar on it, we can actually read those values and automatically import that into the system. But I just wanted to cover this in case you needed, again, to make corrections to information that was brought into the system. Maybe it marked it as on duty for a quarter hour too long. You could actually just remove these points and then make your changes in that manner too. So this will be helpful if the system accidentally misread something in there. You can actually come back and edit that data. Now, talking about editing data, let's say that you are either processing through the light processing or through the RapidLog Pro processing, and some information just didn't get entered incorrectly. Maybe you accidentally misentered the mileage, or the grid data isn't quite matching up. Now, the nice thing about RapidLog is that you won't have to rescan and reprocess those images if they went to the correct driver. So let's say on the 8th here for this driver, let's say this 2 hours of driving, it was actually supposed to be, from 4 to 6, it was actually supposed to be off duty or on duty not driving. So what we could do is we'll just go to the appropriate driver and date, and then we can make our edits to the digital grid above by clicking and dragging, just like with light processing, adding logs in, or the grid step in RapidLog Pro. So you'll just click and drag to make those changes in the system there, and once you are done making your changes and would like to save the information, just move off of that day, and then that'll save the information that you just added to the system there. Now, you can do the same thing with the miles or the violations on the left-hand side, any of the form and manner violations. Let's say that RapidLog Pro accidentally gave the driver a signature violation, when in reality he actually did sign his log and you don't want him to have that violation anymore. All you'll have to do is click on the highlighted violation to get it off of that blue color, and then that'll remove the violation for that particular driver and day. And then if you needed to change the mileage in the system, let's say that it was actually 500 miles instead of 525, we'll just type 500 for the miles there, move off of that particular date, and then that'll save our changes as well. Now, the last thing that we're going to cover today is deleting a log out of the system entirely. Let's say that you accidentally imported logs for the incorrect driver and you just need to wipe that information out. Now, the first thing that you'll probably want to do is you'll want to delete your image out of the system. So if we click on the wrench in the upper right-hand corner, we'll notice that we just have a force re-audit option here, and it doesn't say anything about deleting an image out. Now, to delete an image, what you'll have to do is you'll have to click on the Images tab down below, and from there, we'll then click on the wrench again. Now we'll have a Delete Image option, and we'll just click on that, and that'll remove the image for that particular day. Now, if you notice, we still have all of the grid data for this particular day. So to get rid of that, what we'll do is we'll change this from a regular log down below here to an unentered log. And that'll remove all of the data for that particular day, minus truck numbers, jurisdiction, and speed limit data. So it actually removed the oil field information as well as the grid data and mileage, but it did keep the jurisdictions in there for us. So you just want to keep that in mind. But that's essentially it for deleting the image out of the system if you process it under the wrong driver. Now, let's say that you wanted to print out an image that you've already imported into the system here to give to a driver or for whatever reason. What you would need to do in that instance is you would just want to click on the Images tab down below here, and from there you'll have a little printer icon off to the right hand side of the program. Just click on the print button, and then you can tell it to either print the current image or a range of images. For training purposes, we won't print anything out, but I just wanted to show you the options right here. And if you didn't want to print the actual image out and just wanted to print the log data up top here, what you could do instead of clicking this print button over here is you could actually click on the print button at the top of the screen, and you could say print log details. And what this is going to do is it's going to go ahead and generate an image with some recap information and various other things for that particular day, and then you can print that out as a hard copy if you'd like from there. Otherwise, what you could do under that print option is you could just print the daily hours report, select your dates that you would like to print there, and then that'll just give you a nice little rundown for the daily hours report there. That about wraps it up for the logs page, so let's go ahead and take a look at what we just covered there. Now that we've showed you how to use light processing and edit existing log data, we're going to move over to the audit page to show you how to audit the data against the hours of service you're currently running under. In the next webinar training segment, we will show you how to audit your data, and we will be covering the following: how to choose what audits to run, and how to run the various audits listed below. So let's move over to the RapidLog program and pull up our audit page to get started. Now that we're on the audit page, let's go ahead and figure out what audits we'll need to run for our particular company. Now, most companies, all they'll really need to run is the hours of service audit and the find missing logs audit. Now, the hours of service audit, that will cover the jurisdictional type of violations as well as average speed. So you'll always want to run the hours of service audit, and the find missing logs audit you'll probably want to run no matter what your situation is as far as a company goes, just because that'll let you know which drivers are missing logs in the system for you. and you can go in and ask the drivers to turn in those logs at that point in time. So the two basic audits that you'll always want to run are the hours of service audit and the find missing logs audit. So essentially all you have to do is check the hours of service box, check the find missing logs box, and then set your date ranges that you'd like to find missing logs from, and then click the start button down below. Now, if you happen to have integrated a mileage engine such as ProMiles or PC Miler, you'll actually want to run the point-to-point speeding falsification. That will make sure that drivers are not speeding between two given points, but you will need a third-party program to tie into to accomplish that. So ProMiles and PC Miler both have connection pieces, but they are going to cost you additional from both of those companies. The team conflict falsification, that is going to check to make sure that the team drivers that we added on the logs page don't have driving time at the same time. So if you do have teams, you'll want to check the team conflict falsification audit when you do your audits. The next one that we'll cover are the pre-screen checkpoints, and this will be, you'll need to run this if you are importing fuel transactions into your system and you've set up automated rules for that. Now, we do have another video covering fuel imports from our training page under our knowledge base at RapidLog.com. So if you're curious about setting up the fuel imports and doing the pre-screen checkpoints, there's some additional details on our website about doing that. So really you'll only need to do the pre-screen checkpoints audit if you are importing fuel data and have set up your rules for automation there. Now, the last audit we'll cover is the audit GPS data. Now, this audit will only need to be run if you're importing GPS points into your system, and this will, I believe, require a monthly fee to run this. Now, most of our customers don't run the audit GPS data simply because they can import their fuel transactions and get a fairly good idea to see if the drivers are falsifying their logs. So most people don't have to worry about the audit GPS data, but if you happen to import GPS data into the RapidLog program, you'll want to select that as well. But again, that does require a monthly fee to do that. So you'll actually want to set that up with your salesperson first before you try to run that at all. Since we're just covering some of the basic audits today, we'll just go ahead and run our hours of service audit and our find missing logs audit today. So we'll just set our date ranges. We'll do, let's say, July 1st to today, let's say, and we'll just start the audit. After it skips through all the drivers there, you'll get an audit completed successfully message down below, and then after you're done auditing your information, you can then run reports against the information you've just audited. That about wraps up auditing your data, so let's go ahead and take a look at what we've just covered. Now that we've finished covering auditing the data, we'll move on to show you how to run reports in the system. In this webinar segment, we will show you how to run reports, and we will be covering the following: how to preview a report, how to print a report, how to change date ranges, how to use driver filters, how to customize driver letters, how to change report settings, and the 5 reports you need to know about. So let's move over to the reports page to get started. So the first thing that we'll cover on the reports segment is we'll show you how to preview a report in the system. So we'll just use the violation list as an example here for previewing a report. The first thing that you'll want to do is you'll want to click on the report that you'd like to run. From there, you'll select the date ranges in which you would like to view the information. So if we wanted to see the information from July 1st, we'll just click on our little dates box there, change the dates appropriately, and maybe we want to run it till today, so till 9/23. A couple of other things that you'll need to set here are just the filters. So if you wanted to see information for the entire company, just keep the entire company set there. Otherwise, you can bring up a specific driver or region or terminal, depending on what you want to view there. For this example, we'll just select the entire company. And then you can include which drivers you'd like to include on the report. So from here, you can say, I want to see all my drivers in the system, or maybe I just want to see the active drivers that aren't terminated. For today, I'll just select all drivers on our filters. And to preview the report, all we have to do is click on the preview button on the left-hand side here. Now, to print this report, what we could do is we could either click the print icon in the upper right-hand corner, and then that would ask us which pages we'd like to print off. So if it was just 2 pages, like it says page 1 of 2 here, we would just type in 1-2 to print all pages, or we could simply say just print the first page by typing the number 1. I'm not going to print this out since this is just for training purposes, so I'm going to go ahead and click cancel here. Otherwise, if you wanted to send all pages to the printer without specifying the range of pages you'd like to print off, simply go back to Choose a Report, select the appropriate report, change your settings and filters down below, and then just simply click on Send to Printer. And then that will send the report directly to your printer without previewing it on your screen first. Now, with my experience in using the RapidLog program, I've found that there are 6 common reports that most companies have an interest in. Now, we have many more than 6 reports available, but I'm just going to go ahead and cover the 6 that seem to be the most useful for companies that will get you started running your reports for your company. So essentially, the first one I'd like to cover is the violation list. Now, this is a great report to run if you're curious which drivers had violations in the system for a given period of time. This will itemize each violation for the given date range, and we'll organize that by date. So for this driver, we have quite a few missing logs violations in the system, and it's just going to let us know what violations we're receiving and different things like that. Now, one thing to note on the violation list is it will show you missing log violations in the system, but if you have logs that are marked as unentered and don't have a missing violation, they won't show up here. So another really good report to run would be your latent missing log list. So essentially what this does is it looks for any missing logs in the system as well as any unentered logs. So if those logs, let's say we forget to run a missing log audit in the system and the system didn't mark any of the missing logs with a missing log violation, we can simply run the latent missing log list to pull up those latent missing logs. So if we preview this, let's say for the same time period, we should get the same results because we ran our missing log audit earlier today. But this will just show you in a little bit different fashion what logs are missing from the system for a particular driver, and it'll actually make that list quite a bit smaller for you, as it'll kind of give you chunks of time as opposed to each individual violation that's missing. So when you're trying to round up logs for the month, the latent missing log report is a must-have in my opinion. Now, another really cool report is the overview list. If we preview this right now, it's going to give us a bunch of different information as far as how many days that particular driver worked, how many hours did that driver work, and how many miles did that driver drive during that given time period. And then if you notice on the right hand side here, we do have some month details. So essentially we have the number sign right there and a bunch of question marks. Now if we go to the bottom of this report here, we've got a legend down here that explains each day there. So the number sign is just a day with on duty / driving time, and the question mark just represents a missing login to the system. So if we scroll back up here and look at that information, we have 1 day during that period of time that has drive time, and the rest are missing logs for that period of time. But it does give you some nice totals, again, as far as how many hours the driver worked and how many miles were driven during that time period. So another really nice report is the violation summary report. So what this will tell us is it'll tell us how we're kind of doing as a company. It'll give us all of our violations between a given period of time, and it'll itemize those on the bottom of the report by what we're having the most issues with. So it'll list all of the drivers in the system, for the time ranges that you had, and it'll count up all the violations in the system. And then on the right hand side here, it'll tell you which are the most predominant violations across the company. And from there, you can use this report to crack down on different things that you're seeing your drivers commonly miss. So maybe the drivers are forgetting to take their 30-minute break throughout the day, and they keep getting the brakes violation in the system. You could then address that issue at your next company meeting or through the driver communication letters. But this just is a nice report that kind of lets you know where you stand as a company and where you may need to look into fixing some issues that may need addressed. So this is great for just kind of keeping your company in compliance and really keying in on what your drivers are really having some issues with there, and you can address them before they become a major problem for your company. And finally, the last report that I want to show you guys today is going to be the simple letters, or the driver communication letters, as we call them. So on the simple letters here, essentially you'll just select a time period on which you want to run them. So a lot of companies, they'll do it for just a month at a time. They'll print their driver letters out monthly. Others will do it quarterly, but essentially you can define again the date ranges that you'd like to select there. So for this exercise today, we'll just set it from July 1st to today. Now, if we preview the simple letters here, we're going to have a nice letter telling the driver, what he's having some issues with in the system. So he's got a couple of violations through that time period, so it's just going to let the driver know what he was having some problems with during that time period. And then it'll also show you the missing logs. So down below the violations, we have the missing logs paragraph saying we're missing logs for these particular dates. And then if we go over to the next driver, kind of the same thing here, just not as many violations in the system, just a couple of mileage violations here. Now, the wording in these letters are totally customizable. So if you don't like the way a paragraph reads, or you'd like to change what you include, you can do that through the Advanced tab on the left-hand side here. Now, the first thing that you'll want to do is you'll want to make sure that you have your simple letters report selected there, and then you can click on the Advanced tab here. Now, to edit the paragraphs, you'll just go to the Paragraph section. From there, you can go ahead and edit any of this data that you'd like in any of the paragraphs here. But one thing to be cautious of is not overwriting the values that are in brackets here. Those are actually dynamic values, and you can feel free to move those around, but just know that if you do delete those, such as driver name, that will not show the driver's name on the report at that point in time. So just be a little bit careful with the bracketed fields. Like I said, you can feel free to move those or copy those over to different paragraphs if you'd like, but just be aware that those do link into dynamic data there. So after you make your changes to your paragraphs, you'll just want to save it down here. And what you'll want to do after that is you'll want to click on the Format page here, and under the body paragraphs, that will depict what gets displayed on the letters. So if you wanted to wish your drivers a happy birthday and wanted to include the birthday paragraph, you'd want to keep that check. But if you didn't want to wish them a happy birthday, or a company anniversary, if you didn't want to congratulate them on being with your company for X amount of years, you can simply uncheck those paragraphs and they'll no longer display on your letters for you. And you can do this with any of the other paragraphs. So by default, we notice opening paragraph isn't checked. So maybe one day, let's say you ran your audit summary list and you noticed that a lot of your drivers were having some issues with the 30-minute break violation. What you could do as kind of like a company memo is you could check the opening paragraph right here. And under the paragraphs, just go ahead and say, through auditing your logs, we've noticed that a lot of drivers have been running into this issue. Or maybe you want to use it as your company picnic paragraph. Maybe you guys are having a company picnic this weekend and want to let all the drivers know on their driver letters. You could include that in the opening paragraph. Just save your changes and then make sure you have that box checked on your body paragraphs under the format page there if you wanted to include that. And there's a lot of other pieces of information in here that you can feel free to play around with. But those are some of the more common things that our customers will edit are the body paragraphs. And like I said, just play around with some of the fields. Maybe you don't want the RapidLog logo on your letters. You can just uncheck that and not have that on there. So just again, just play around with it, see how the reports are printing out, and just get it to your liking. And once you get it set there, you really won't have to touch this again. If you go to the last tab here, the log images, you can actually print the actual log image that had the violation on it. So the driver Tony Brown in the system there had about 3 or 4 days worth of violations there. So if we wanted to include those actual logs that they were getting violations on, just check this box here, and then the log images will print out as separate pages to those reports as well. So feel free to use that. I like to keep it off just to save paper, but if you find it helpful, feel free to utilize that piece there. On the filters page, this is just referring to the system violation classes that you'd like to show your drivers, and the manual classes, which are just like form and manner violations. You can remove any of these if you didn't want to show them, a particular violation. So if we go to the company page here and click on our violation classes, these are the A through Z values that it's referring to on the reports page. So if you didn't want to give or let the driver know about, let's say, a duplicate log violation that you've assigned in the system there, and you just do duplicate log violations for your own internal reporting, you can go to the reports page and then click on your simple letters, then advanced, and then go down to your filters and just remove that A violation class, and then the drivers won't know about that particular violation. And the similar thing goes with the system classes as well. So if you didn't want them to see a speeding violation, you could actually find that from the violations page there, remove that particular value, and then they would no longer see the speeding violations on there. And then the important dates and the missing logs, this just means the report will let the drivers know about 30 days out that their expirations are going to come up. So if you utilize the important dates on the driver's page or use the driver's license expiration field on the driver's page, this will let the drivers know about 30 days out when those expirations are coming up so that they can address those in a timely manner. And then as far as the missing logs go, for the missing logs paragraph, it'll show you missing logs 30 days before the start of the letter by default. Otherwise, you can set that to 0 days before, so it'll just be the time in which you're printing them out. So if we printed, with that value being 30 there, if we printed out August 1st simple letters, it would actually let us know of any missing logs in July. Otherwise, if we set that value to a 0, it would just let us know about missing logs for August. So that's all that's referring to. And then finally, on the paragraphs, or on the format page here, I just wanted to cover the missing logs paragraph. So if you remember before, it was actually just stating that we're missing logs from one period of time to another in just a small paragraph that the drivers may not notice if they just kind of glance over their logs. So if you uncheck the missing logs paragraph, the missing logs violation will actually show up under the violations there. So if we preview this again, we'll notice that this driver, Tony Brown here, in his violation section is much larger because we're displaying the missing logs violation under the violations tab as opposed to the missing logs paragraph that was below the violations. So just to kind of recap on that, if we flip on the missing logs paragraph and preview that information now, we just see our records show that you're missing some logs from this date to this date, and they may not see it if they just glance through it. But if you change that and uncheck the missing logs body paragraph, the missing logs violations will show up under that violation tab and might be a little bit more in the a little bit more visible to the driver when they're reviewing the report. So that's really just a personal preference kind of thing. I usually like to uncheck that, but again, it's just going to be whatever you like best as far as how those reports print off. Now, there are a couple of advanced features that you can do for most all of these reports here. So just for the violation list, for example, if we click on violation list and then on the advanced tab, it's going to ask us what violation classes we'd like to include, similar to the simple logs page. And so, feel free to edit that as needed. Usually I just leave it alone, but if you just need to see a specific violation in the system, you can edit that as needed. And then the minimum threshold's a really neat feature. So right now, it's going to show us all drivers in the system that we run the violation list for, even if they don't have a violation. So if we change that number to, let's say, 3, when we run the report next, it'll only show us drivers that have 3 or more violations for that date range. So if you're looking for some of your worst offenders or something along those lines, you can feel free to change that minimum threshold to whatever value you feel comfortable with. So if we change that to 3 right now, it's only going to show us drivers with 3 or more violations there. And since both of these drivers have 3 or more violations, they're both showing up. But if we change this, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. If we change the minimum threshold to 8, Ryan here would actually go away on that report. So if we only want to see if we only wanted to see drivers with 8 or more violations, we'll change that minimum threshold to 8, preview that report, and then we should just have the one driver showing up here. So if we scroll through, we see that Ryan dropped off that list because he didn't meet the minimum threshold essentially there. And a lot of these reports, again, they do have some advanced features in there that you can feel free to change around a little bit. But one thing that you are going to probably see quite a bit is going to be the minimum threshold, and that'll be on quite a few of them. But like I said, there's quite a few reports in the system here that you may find helpful. Now, that about wraps it up for running reports, so let's just take a look at what we've just covered. Now that we've shown you how to run reports in the regular RapidLog program, we'll now move on to the web reports and show you how to generate reports through that option. In this webinar training segment, we will show you how to use web reports, and we will be covering the following: how to log into web reports, how to preview reports, how to save or print your reports, how to look up logs on web reports, and finally, how to add new users to web reports. So let's move over to rapidlogreports.com to get started. So the first thing we're going to cover is how to log into the Web Reports module. So essentially, your technician should have given you a username and password to access the Web Reports site. And so I'm just going to go ahead and type in my username and password. And then to go ahead and enter the Web Reports, just go ahead and click the OK button down here. Now, the first thing that we're going to notice is we're going to get some charts generated for us. This is going to show us the violation worst offenders, the missing logs worst offenders, and the violation percentages for a given time range. Now, you can go ahead and adjust the the settings through the options button here. You can change the date ranges, how many drivers show up on that report, and also the different style chart that you'd like to see there. So if you wanted to see vertical bar charts instead of the pie charts, you can change that right in there. So I'm just going to change that pie chart to the bar charts there, just to give you an idea of what that looks like. Another nice feature of the charts here is if you click on the upper right hand corner of any of the charts, that'll give you a little bit bigger scope to look at the information, so you can see exactly what drivers you're having some issues with. And to minimize that, again, just click in the upper right hand corner of that particular chart there. So another nice little feature too would just be generating reports from these charts. So you can click on Quick Report, and from there that'll give you the printout of that particular report in the reports format as opposed to that graphical format. So now that we've kind of covered the charts here, we'll just go ahead and move on to the reports section. So we'll just click on the bottom here to pull up our reports. So we're just going to click on the drop down right here, and we'll notice that we have 4 reports available. So Web Reports doesn't have as many reporting options as the regular RapidLog program, but it'll be nice for people maybe like in upper management that you need to kind of keep them posted on different things. This might be a nice option for those type of users as opposed to the log auditors or the safety department heads that actually run the actual program there. So this is just a nice little tool that gives some additional users access to some other reports. And you'll just set your date ranges in here, whether it be custom dates or some of the preset values there. And the one thing that you'll want to pay attention to is the output to. So there's a couple of different options there. There's the PDF to screen, the PDF to file. So that's just saying, do I want to just view the PDF file, or do I want to save the PDF file to file there? And then we also have some Excel formats. So if you wanted to bring the information into Microsoft Excel, we do have that available there. The other two are just rich text format and plain text. So you can kind of think of rich text format similar to like a Word document, and plain text similar to like a text file that you would open up in Notepad. So those are just the different options on where you can either view or save those files to. And the rest of the stuff is pretty self-explanatory, just asking you what company you want to run that for. And then also how to sort it, either by driver name or ID number. You have some best to worst options as well. So you can definitely customize it as much as you'd like through there. And then also just keep in mind, it does ask you how many drivers you want to view on that report. So if you want to see all of your drivers, just make sure that you add a value greater than the number of drivers in your system, and you should be good to go. And again, if you remember from the last video segment talking about the minimum threshold, this is going to be the same thing here. So if we set this to 0 and run a violation list, all of our drivers are going to show up on that. If we set that to 1, only drivers with a violation during that time period will show up at that point in time. So once you get everything set the way that you'd like, just go ahead and click your print button, and then you'll be able to view that document either on screen or save that to file, depending on what your options are there. Now we'll move on to the notifications. Again, this is just really another section for reports, but this is going to be the violation letters and the driver communication letters. So essentially, the driver communication letters are going to be your simple letters, and your violation letters are going to be your smart letters. So between those two reports, they give you about the same information, but I would recommend just using your driver communication letters as you can define the date range that you'd like to run it for, as opposed to the violation letters. So between those two reports, I would definitely recommend running the driver communication letters, but just do what feels right to you, or what you feel comfortable with, and just kind of go from there. But again, once you get your settings all squared away, you'll just hit the print button, and then you'll either have the option to view that on screen, or save that to file. So now we'll move on to Log Explorer. Now through web reports, you can actually view logs for a given driver in the system right through this application here. So let's just look up driver. We'll look for Brian Brown here. So we'll just click on the driver. And if we notice, we have a calendar that is pretty much all red here. And what that's going to be indicating for us is just a missing log in the system. So essentially, you'll get a couple of different fields through here. So you'll either have a gray here, which is going to be an unentered log, a red block here, which would be a missing log, and if you did have a log on file, it would actually be white with a little image that we could click on to bring up. So let's move over to a little bit better driver that may have some logs that we can view there. So now if you notice, we have a bunch of gray dates here indicating unentered logs, and then we also have a couple of white spaces here with some pieces of paper that indicate there is a log on file to view. So if we wanted to look at that particular day, we would just click on that log, and it would show us a digital printout of the image. And then if we had a log image on file, so if we scanned our logs in and save those to file, we could click on log image here, and that would display the log image for that particular day for us. Since I didn't enter in any data, or since I didn't enter any images into the system and strictly just added the log data, it's just going to show us the digital grid here because there's no image saved on file. But if you did save your images on file, you would be able to view those through the log image button right there. Now, the last thing that you'll probably want to know about is how to create new users in the system so that you can have other people in your company view reports and view these driver logs whenever they need to. So to add new users in the system, you'll just click on the users button down below here. And from there, you'll click on Create New User. After that, you'll just assign that user a username, a password, and then you'll just want to go ahead and type in their email address. Now, there's a couple of key points that I'd like to make here, and that's mostly going to be about permissions. So if I drop the permissions button down here, we have two different options. We have cannot create users and can create company users. So all this is saying is if you select cannot create users, that means the user that you just created cannot go to the users page and create new users for the rest of the company. If you allow them to create users, so select can create company users, then that new user could go under the users tab in web reports and then click create new user just like we did here. Now, a couple of other things that may be of interest to you is the base access. So let's say you have a couple of different terminals throughout the country and you just want a particular user to view just their terminal. What you could do there when creating that user is set the base access here by clicking on the three little dots to the right of base access. And from there, you can either set them to have access to the entire company, or you can specify which terminals or regions that they can only view. So if I just wanted our new user to view the Imperial terminal, I would just check Imperial, and then that would be the only information that that particular user could see. So that about covers it for creating the new user. So let's just go ahead and recap on what we just covered. That'll about wrap it up for our webinar training here today. If you do have any additional questions at this point in time, feel free to use your chat window to ask our trainer any additional questions you may have about the program. But at any rate, thanks for joining us and have a great day.